Hello? Hello? Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. First of all, I would like to welcome and thank everyone for being here today in a very special photo. Today I speak on behalf of Victor Echarri, Director of UIC Barcelona School of Architecture, who will be present here today. Also, with regards to Felipe Pic Aguilera and Juan Trias de Bes, co-directors of Photos 2024, and also Marta García Orte, who has been coordinating this cycle of photos together with me during these weeks. Before introducing our speakers today, I would also like to thank the presence in our front row of Sandra Bestraten, that she will arrive in a couple of minutes. She already texted me, which is the director of COAC, the delegation of Barcelona, and then also professor of cooperation at UIC Barcelona School of Architecture. Also welcome to Catherine Golda, professor of the Department of Urbanism, Territory and Landscape at Esta, and until recently, UIC professor of cooperation. Also welcome to Ivonne Bilbao, co-founder of Arquitectas de Capçalera and professor at the ETSAP. Raúl Avilla, architect and professor of the ETSAP and Arquitectas de Capçalera. And also Fermín Vázquez, architect and founding partner of B720 and a good friend of our speakers. All of them colleagues and friends, but here today as architects and highly qualified speakers for their work and their professional and academic career to speak today on the topic at hand. I would also like to thank the work of the students of the UIC Barcelona School of Architecture of Photos, especially those who have been preparing the session today. Also, I would like to thank our sponsors, Propamsa, Neocerámica, IESE, Cementos Molins, and Simon. And finally, I would like to welcome to those of you outside of the school who have decided to come this afternoon to talk about a fundamental issue, which is none other than the social engagement of the architect, the social engagement of the architecture. As you know, this is the second year that we are coordinating the cycle of photos from projects department at UIC Barcelona School of Architecture. 2 years ago, we took the leap into the void, organizing a series of debates around 6 specific themes: typology, innovation, research, heritage, urbanism, and sustainability. And this year, again, under the same series of debates, we do it with the aim of landing to touch the ground and root the pillars of what could be a new paradigm with which to face the great challenges of our time. But perhaps 2 years ago, we omitted the most important vector that somehow unites them all, and that is the social engagement. Architecture must return to people to the center of the debate, above everything else, because our work must fundamentally focus on people, on responding to their basic needs, and on knowing how to listen to what society expects from us as architects. In recent years, architects have seemed to distance themselves from society, and we architects have often been labeled as arrogant, capricious, and self-centered collective. And by doing so, distancing ourselves more and more from people's lives. We cannot deny that architecture has been carried away by a certain collective euphoria, full of excesses, where our profession has been linked more to a certain social elite, linked to certain economic and political interests, or to a mere formal result empty of content. The truth is that today, construction is growing exponentially, and the uncontrolled development of our cities is seriously damaging the planet, and compromising our social balance and increasingly inequality society. To reverse this process, the approach must change, and the solution can only come from putting people back at the center. That means at the center of our professional practice and at the center of our pedagogical approach as students and teachers. A good example that illustrates this new paradigm and this change of perspective is the Fundación Ría, promoted by David Chipperfield. We all know who David Chipperfield is and what he represents for architecture. But today he has not come here to explain his extensive and sublime work, but his latest and most unknown project, perhaps the most valuable. A project that arises from the bond and love that David Chipperfield possesses to the land and cultures of Galicia, and that has led him to establish his foundation there. But let me introduce him properly for those who come from another planet. David Chipperfield studied architecture at Kingston School of Art and the Architectural Association School of Architecture in London. He worked for Douglas Stephen, Richard Rogers, and Norman Foster before founding his own practice in 1985 and establishing a design methodology now used in 5 offices in London, Berlin, Milan, Shanghai, and Santiago de Compostela. David Chipperfield is a fellow of the Royal Institute of British Architects and a honorary member of the American Institute of Architects and the Bund Deutscher Architekten. His honors include the Order of Merit at the Federal Republic of Germany, awarded in 2009, and knighthood for services to the architecture in the United Kingdom and Germany, awarded in 2010. He has received the RIBA, or RIBA, Royal Gold Medal for Architecture in 2011, and the Premium Imperiale from the Japan Art Association in 2013, both in recognition of a lifetime work. David Chipperfield was made member of the Order of Companions of Honor of the United Kingdom in 2021, commander of the Order of Isabella the Catholic of Spain, and a member of the Order pour le Mérite für Wissenschaften and Kunst of Germany in 2022, for his services to architecture internationally. And in 2023, he was awarded the Pritzker Architectural Prize. In addition to designing, David Chipperfield has taught and lectured at architectural schools around the world. In 2012, he curated the 13th International Architectural Exhibition at Venice Biennale under the title Common Ground. He was an architectural mentor from 2016 and 2017 for the Rolex Mentor and Protégé Arts Initiative. David Chipperfield has published numerous books and articles, including On Planning, a Thought Experiment in 2018, a publication exploring and theorizing the urban qualities of contemporary urban developments. He was guest editor in 2020 of the Italian design magazine Domus. And finally, in 2017, he founded the Ría Fundación, or Fundación Ría. The Ría Foundation is constituted as an independent, non-profit agency, a think tank that contributes to the analysis, reflection, and strategical territorial planning of Galicia, with the aim of preserving its natural and cultural values and promoting its quality of life. The philanthropic initiative driven by David Chipperfield seeks to connect global challenges with specific environments, establishing links between public and private agents necessary for the implementation of projects aligned with the environmental, economical, and social sustainability of our territory. For this, David Chipperfield has put together a young team of mainly architects and, among other disciplines, led and coordinated by our guest today, Manuel Rodríguez. Manuel Rodríguez López graduated in architecture in 2015 from the ETSAP, Universitat Politècnica de Catalunya, and did exchange studies in LTH Lund University in Sweden. During his studies, he collaborated with the studio Ivy Perneger and Associates in Geneva, and with the Mies van der Rohe Foundation, and then Arquitectos de Cabecera Initiative in Barcelona. His final degree project connects him with David Chipperfield to launch and coordinate the Studio Arousa initiative, for which he joins David Chipperfield Architects in London in 2016, developing the first Ría de Arousa workshop for territorial analysis and strategy in Ribeira. Manuel coordinates the permanent team that is established in Galicia in 2017, which at the end of the same year would become the Ría Foundation, or the Fundación Ría. Since December 2022, Manuel has held the position of director of the Ría Foundation, providing continuity and expanding the tasks of institutional representation, administration, and coordination of the team and technical direction of the projects, activities, and initiatives promoted by the entity. Ria's activities are structured in 3 main areas: territorial planning and local identity, sustainable territorial management, and architectural and design culture. But for sure, Manuel will tell us much more about it in a couple of minutes. And finally, let me introduce you to our counterpoint for this forum, Josep Bohigas. Josep Bohigas is an architect by the ETSAP, UPC. He studied the Master AD program at Columbia University and the official Master in Communication and Design at Pompeu Fabra University. Associate Professor of Projects or Design Studio at the ETSAP, co-director of the Master of Lighting Design of the UPC Foundation, and guest professor of various universities around the world. From 1991 to 2015, he co-directed the Bobba Architectural Studio, winning several competitions such as the extension of the Thyssen Museum in Madrid, the Forum Housing, or El Molino Theater in Barcelona, and obtaining professional recognition awards in architecture and design, such as 3 FAD Awards in 1998, 2000, and 2007, or 3 City of Barcelona Awards in 2007, 2014, and 2016, among others. During all these years of teaching and professional activity, he has directed and curated several cultural activism programs, such as Barraca Barcelona in 2003, APTM 2005, M3 2009, and also here Arquitectes de Capçalera in 2014, together with Piso Piloto in 2015, which have investigated and exposed new solutions to the habitat problem. From 2016 to 2023, he has been General Director of the Strategical Planning Agency, Barcelona Regional. And from 2019 to 2023, he has been Director of the Barcelona Urban Ecology Agency. He is currently part of the Urban Front Agency, a translational consulting firm focused on helping progressive public and social sectors achieve their goals in addressing critical urban issues of the 21st century. Partners, we have been partners of numerous battles here in this house, present in countless juries and course presentations, with the experience shared during the vertical workshop that made possible the Superilla Pilot in Poblenou in 2016, or the Hackathon Discovering the Ronda in 2017. He also debated with us 2 years ago in the Foros 2022 to talk about the urban scale. But his presence here today is undoubtedly more relevant than ever, given his dual role. On the one hand, as a director of Barcelona Regional for the last 8 years, heading the agency that is coordinating the agenda of the main projects of the metropolitan region of Barcelona, and on the other, as co-founder of Arquitectos de Cabecera project, or Arquitectos de Capçalera project. Beyond its work and its specific projects, has become a breeding ground for architects with a new approach to the practice of our profession. A query that has given and established a bottom-up working method, deeply rooted in a field work and in the close proximity with social groups, and that, among others, has formed Manuel Rodríguez, today at the head of the Ría Foundation. So we begin with Manuel Rodríguez, who will speak about the Ría Foundation, followed by Josep Bohigas and David Chipperfield, who, for scheduling reasons, has not been able to join us personally here today, but whose intervention will give away our debate at the last hour. So let's give a warm round of applause for these 3 guests. Thank you very much.
Hola. Sí, se me escucha. Vale. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Jaime, for this introduction, and thank you, the university, for having us here today. Also, Chamber of Architects, here represented by Sander Straten, and other special guests that are here today. I'd like to first apologize for the absence of David Chipperfield here today. He was trying until the very last minute, but in the end, for scheduling reasons, he couldn't be here, but he will join a bit later online. So he will also join this debate at the end of the day. I'd like to start my presentation, which is to describe what we do at the Ría Foundation and how we approach projects in the different areas that we work. We call it the architect beyond the conventional practice, since we don't really consider that this is another way of doing things, but another layer or an extension of the conventional practice, something that sometimes is before the commission arrives to the architect, sometimes before the question is asked in a competition. For those who are not familiar of Spain and this region, Galicia is here in the northwest of Spain, and is characterized by this marvelous landscape. Landscape that is not only for looking at it, for contemplating, but is a productive landscape. We also always like to show this photograph from the viewpoint of a curota in a Pobra do Caramiñal, because here we can see a lot of these layers of complexity that we normally study and in which we try to interconnect our projects. Here we can see a typical fishing town set in a strategic place, protected from the winds which are out of the sea. This is the typical Ría of Galicia, Ría da Arousa in this case, an inlet in the land of salty water, kind of a fjord, which has very special characteristics in terms of ecosystem. It has its richness in nutrients, and this allows the flourishing of fish, shellfish, and other kind of seafood here that is, of course, provoking or creating local economies, primary economies. But this town, in this photo, we can also see the expansion of these activities. We can see here the big developments many times out of scale. We can also see the urban sprawl going out of the village along the roads. We can see the economic activities represented in this myriad of platforms floating in the sea, cultivating mussel for feeding an industry that is also located in this port. This is the small fleet that works inside the area, but also a bit larger fleet, and of course the tuna boats that comes from the Indic, from the Pacific, and other territories, fishing for 4 months, coming here and processing that tuna here. I mean, everybody's familiar with these green tuna cans that you can find in Mercadona. This comes from this place. It's processing like 200 tons a day, thousands of employees in these factories. But we also can see the productive landscape in the land, agrarian land that has been decreasing its amount in favor of other plantations, passive management of the land, which is the eucalyptus production for making paper pulp. We will see later a bit of the consequences of that. So this is this kind of productive landscape that we find, the bateas, the platforms where the mussels are cultivated, that created this landscape, and above all, create a culture, a way of life, an economy very rooted in the place. This is the cultivation in intertidal areas of clam, or how the families harvest the clams in these areas. This is a very distributed economy, a very small scale economy, but they're interconnected and with a profound attachment to the site. But also in the land, forestry management, forestry industry is also, together with livestock, define a territory that is combining also with vineyards, forestry, and agrarian land. Also livestock, of course, and this is creating a culture that is in Galicia. This is more almost a religion, which is the food. Very well positioned everywhere, very high quality products that we can find in the local markets, very present, seafood as well, producing in this land, also present in the different markets of Galicia and beyond. In the best restaurants, they are said that the seafood comes from Galicia. And this is the ideal scenario in which the places, I mean, the settlements are located in a deep relation with the environment, the landscape that surrounds us. This is the place where David Chipperfield set his house in the 90s, in this small fishing town called Corrubedo, and even recently opening a bar which celebrates very much these high quality products. But it's not only good things what Galicia has, and actually this is why the Ría Foundation is here. I mean, concerned by the poor development, the poor urban development, but also infrastructure development and the crisis that these economies are facing. In this photo, we also can see why we can see here, again, this agrarian land occupied by houses, second houses, or the extension of the original house, how this planning promotes the urban sprawl, consumption of land, consumption of arable land, which is now a limited resource. Also how the forestry advances towards the agrarian land. At the same time that in the inner centers we can see the nicest houses being abandoned, we can see poor developments going, since the 60s, 70s, this rapid development that Galicia faced because of the rapid development of industries, either related to fishing industries or other industrial processes. Also the impact of traffic in the public space, how this erodes not only the quality of the public space, but consequently the abandonment of houses, historical heritage, and part of our identity. Poor developments completely out of scale that occupy the centers and very celebrated, or were very celebrated by these mayors in the 80s, and also the population, and these left bodies in the green land that extended the cities and then were abandoned. So the first steps that we started with the Ría Foundation was organizing a workshop. This was in 2016 when I joined the office of David Chipperfield Architects in London. After a few months, we started to imagine how we could work in this area, how we could organize something that could provide analysis, better planning, better reflection, and somehow develop proposals that could improve a bit this condition. We gathered a small group of 10 architects from Coruña and Barcelona, and we started working on site. Probably this is completely, inherited by Arquitectos de Capçalera, this methodology of approaching the place, identifying the needs, learning from the people, learning from the place, and then imagining and designing a program that we want to develop through pilot projects. We had extensive debates with local experts, also authorities, internal discussions, and then, of course, inviting those who are making the decisions, the mayors. In this photo, we can see 4 mayors of 4 different parties, the president of the region or the general director of urbanism. With this experience, there was room for doing something else. So we started to imagine how we could develop. And we actually developed in these last 8 years since then, a methodology that is based on the frontline experience, approaching the place with the people there, learning from them how the place works, also getting their insights, their complaints, and trying to understand what those mean. This is a working session with forest communities that manage in altogether a quarter of the Galician territory in common land, which is a very weird or exotic way of land ownership, to then map these issues, visualize them to identify where we could have an impact in order to create pilot projects that have these layers of complexity that are transversal and take together the interrelationship between the different issues. And then, of course, again, bringing the decision makers into the discussion, trying to transfer to them our reflections, our conclusions, and then also propose strategies that could change the situation. In this moment, it was 2017, when we decided to organize, to create Fundación Ría. And it was actually to create a tool, how we can push this forward, how we can develop further this research, these conclusions, these debates relating in a comfortable way with public institutions, with private institutions, with academic institutions, with everybody, without being a private company. And this is why we created this tool, an independent agency, non-profit, that tried to develop this and facilitate the debate between everybody. One of the main focuses is protect the identity. We can see this facade. This is a typical fishing town in the 40s, 50s in Galicia, and this is what we can find today. Of course, a poor development, lack of planning, lack of regulations, rapid investment that completely transformed the facade of these towns, but also the quality of place, which is the base of our quality of life. We can see in this section that was developed over one of these workshops, in the 40s, 50s, the soft transition between the forest, the agrarian land, the houses, some small economies next to the sea related to the fishing industries, and a soft connection to the water on the beach. However, this changed a lot in the last 4 decades, consolidating completely the seafront through fillings and creating enormous platforms of concrete that separates this town with the meaning of being there, the reason of being there, which was the direct connection to the sea environment. Also the economic boom, which brought these typologies out of scale of this town, the reduction of agrarian land, and also how the industrial parks and the highways appear where they can cross the town. So this densification of infrastructures. And this is Palmeira. This is a typical fishing town that still preserves some of these conditions, but still this platform of concrete that separates the town from the port, that actually it was considered or conceived as a place for promoting the logistics of the fishing industry, but however, it's actually a parking lot with the cars having the best views in the town. What before was a direct connection, a few meters from the houses to the sea, this was the situation that we find in most of these towns. No, this artificial separation, poor quality, separating the houses from the sea. We started this project by a commission or a study that we proposed to the Port Authority, and in coordination with the local authorities. So this area is managed by the region, while the urban space is managed by the municipality. So taking the consideration of the citizens, designing strategies that could organize the parking in the area, we developed a project which aim was trying to reconnect, trying to recover this social function of the public space, trying to organize the parking. And this was our first project that became a reality. It was a project that was more about governance than designing. But of course, designing is an important side of this project. We tried to create these places where people could approach the sea. And this was in the night of San Juan, which they do the bonfires, where everybody was gathering in this long stone bench along the seafront, recovering a bit this connection to the water. We're very happy here because the fishing organization was happy, the bars were happy, the mayor was happy, the region was happy, so it seems that everything worked quite nicely. Another kind of project is the ones that are related to traffic, the impact of traffic in the urban centers, and especially when it's this kind of traffic that crosses the town and doesn't stop. This is a typical street in the 40s, 50s, a social space where commerce, social life, everything was merged and together, and it was a vibrant street. So it's completely different to this situation that we found in many, many places of Galicia, and I guess that in many, many places across Europe and other ways. The prioritization of car of transport before the quality of the place. Logistics, but then a completely loss of identity of the place, a complete loss of meaning for this place that then create these situations where the quick, the fast circulation of cars oblige the regional authority to create this concrete barrier to protect the pedestrians, and of course, nobody wants to be in those ground floors making a business there. So by doing that, we started a project in collaboration with the regional government. This was a first study here set in Palmeira. It was the same village that we saw the port. And we started by mapping everything, of course, again, discussing with the citizens through participatory sessions, trying to first contrast with them and confirm that the conclusions of our analysis were right, to then design a few strategies. If we can reduce the speed, then we can maybe narrow the lanes. If we narrow the lanes, we can expand the sidewalks and introduce some greenery and make it accessible. And then if we can cross with single platforms the two sides, maybe we can start showing two sides of the town. Also the parking, organizing the parking around the center, prioritizing the pedestrian streets, and then organizing the facilities or the supplies. And this is a bit how we end our project. Sometimes we go a bit farther and we make some images, as you can see here, but we kind of stop when it is an strategic approach, when we set the conditions that then other architects, other civil engineers, or all together should develop the projects after. So we try to not to enter in the competition, but to somehow establish the brief of that competition. You can see some transformation illustrating that, and now we are hoping that this could continue. This first project that was based in Palmeira allowed us to establish a collaboration agreement with the regional authority of infrastructures and mobility, extending the project to the whole road that connects here Padrón with Ribeira, and allowing us to develop a specific analysis, specific projects in these other 5 locations. What allowed us to transform a very specific intervention into a territorial project, a project that then could address other issues, which is the presence of the car in the public space and the erosion that this car makes to the quality of the place. Also, the lack of alternatives. If you remove cars, you have to provide an alternative, and this is public transport. And in this case, public transport was completely old-fashioned, or not attractive at all, doesn't work, no available information. So what we tried to do, was considering what were the main traffic infrastructures. So it was the motorway, and then the coastal road that goes here. We cannot see it, but it was in the one that we are intervening, this one. And then considering also what was or where were the mobility generators, those places that generate most mobility. Before I said that these kind of factories employ like 2,000 people. They are working 24 hours, like with turns of 800 people. So actually the industrial park is the place where people commute, where people are moving, and we consider that making a shift in the conventional conception was right, that was putting here the intermodal station in the industrial park. So we could have then a fast lane going directly from Santiago de Compostela to Ribeira only with 5 stops in 1 hour, then stopping intermodal stations in the industrial polygons, in the industrial parks, and then connecting with shuttles to another slow line or a small scale line, maybe with electric buses that could cross in a much softer way those interventions that we promoted with the urban regeneration. This strategy was presented to everybody, again, to the authorities and mobility, infrastructures, the mayors. We gathered the support of 4 mayors, again, 4 different parties signing the same projects, and we tried to bring this proposal to other authorities like European funding and so on. We even were here with the president of Monbus, which is the mobility company that is managing this system. I said before that we try to stop a bit before the commission is done, so trying to ask the right question. And here I look at my friends of Arquitectos de Capçalera and Josep, because this was something that I learned from them. Like, if you ask a right question, you might get right answers. But if you ask a wrong question, you never will get a good answer. And this is something that in Galicia is very present, that are the quality of the briefs, the quality of competitions, even, I mean, if there are competitions at all. Sometimes it's just an administrative bid, it's just economic offer, what has the weight in the decision making. And we had the chance here to work with the CSIC. CSIC is the main public institution in Spain, which has over 100 research centers in many different areas. In this building, 200 researchers work here in marine research, and we had the chance to work with them to design and to help them to design the new headquarters, the new labs that were going to base in this area, a former military area that had its identity, but since its construction was completely close to the neighborhoods. So the neighborhood, when we met them, were demanding, please open this space. We've been blocked for 70 years. We haven't been able to get into that square at all. We have lost our bid. But other institutions were also saying that they would like to have a place to meet, to keep this kind of squares in between the buildings. So we try to analyze and to try to get their demands. But of course, analyzing the needs and the functions of this institution. The Marine Research Center was combining many different areas in their building. And we interviewed every research group in here, trying to understand what were the dynamics of that, the performance of those research groups within the building. So sometimes they took some fish, they went to a room, they dissect the fish, they take some samples, they take it to a cart, go into the lab, then in the lab storing something in a freezer, then taking that in a room that is completely closed to the other environment. But a different group was completely focusing on other thing. It was cultivating or growing fish in their area, or growing seaweed for feeding those fish. So that was different ideas, different functions that we had to combine and understand in order to make a scheme that then can be summarized in these volumes in the area that actually we kind of develop and design a project, but then we kind of extract the essence of that, and this is what forms the competition brief. This competition was developed in 2021, if I'm not wrong, 2022, and it was won by Pereda Pérez and MRM Arquitectos, and this was the winning proposal following the brief that we created. And of course, after this process, we came back to the place with the neighbors, with the local institutions, with the research institutions, and to celebrate the process that ended up with a winning project. In the same process, we had, having this experience, we had the chance to work with the forest, the Minister of Rural Affairs in Galicia, which allow us to work with this estate. It's a 54 hectares estate focused on forestry research with this amazing palace that used to work as a summer house for a governor in Spain, but then became a sort of residence for students, for forestry research. Everybody in Spain that have studied forestry research have spent here some time. So we tried to organize the functions again, trying to understand what was the value or value chain of the forestry sector, starting by the ecosystem, the analysis of the ecosystem, the statistics, going to the plantations, how these grow, or how you get raw material, how you process that, design, and so on. So trying to analyze a bit what was missing in this center and what this center could do for the chain, for connecting this chain of value of the forestry sector. We then transformed that into functions, what could be in this area, trying to connect the different sectors of this building. And again, we convinced, and we had to work hard to convince the politicians to make a public competition, an open competition, that at the moment is in between the first phase and second phase, with some problems to really resolve that. But we hope that soon it will be resolved and it will go to a second phase in which 8 teams will compete. All this experience also with this minister allowed us to work a bit further in these areas. We want a bit to develop studies and analysis and planning of the whole applied research system of agrarian applied research in Galicia, focused on winery, on forestry, on agrarian and livestock, and doing the same, analyzing their needs, the condition of the place, how the sector works, from the production, from processing to commercialization of products, of food products, how we can include here the circularity and how we can simplify circularity into a building or a state, how we can connect with the companies, how we can connect with the training system, and then visualizing that in this kind of schemes, again, these diagrams that could give keys or clues to the competing teams to develop a project. This is ongoing discussion, is ongoing planning, and no other competitions came out of that yet. The Urban Social Lab is a project that defines very much the other area in which we work, from starting as architects, focusing into process and to protect the identity, but also focusing into process of procurement, of commissioning works. Then we also extend that to this productive landscape in which we are set. Galicia, sadly, faces this situation every summer, forest fires. Has nothing to do with this monoculture of eucalyptus for paper pulp, low added value, completely bad management. But this is a situation that is confronting what Galicia used to be, which was this network of small settlements surrounded by agrarian land with a forest nearby, interconnected in a hierarchical way, which is actually a model that somehow includes the concepts of circularity, the concepts of proximity, of community support, social engagement, everything that somehow we are trying to find now in the future. And we started again, trying to meet the living memory of this place, which were the old people, most of them in the kitchen, by the way, Josep. It's a social place in Galicia, but also contrasting this information with the local archives. It was a moment where, as I said before, a quarter of the territory of Galicia is common land. I think we can see here, these are all common land communities, 3,000 common land communities in Galicia, that you have the right to use those resources just because you live there. And you have to live there to be able to vote in that assembly, which is a very exotic system in Galicia. So since in the 40s and the 50s, these were planted, by the state in the dictatorship. So everything is very recorded because they were suing everybody for bringing their goats or their sheep to the forest. So we try to define and explain how this system used to work, how the house formed the village and how the village together with the common land, both agrarian and forest, could be combined into a parish, which is a self-sufficient minimum entity in Galicia. It has already an administrative place, sometimes identified with the church, and a flexible space, which is the place for the market, also for the party. And again, all this research that we brought or we took from the locals, we try to give back in this kind of sessions, explaining to them what we have learned and what we want to do with that. This is all put together and a bit more in this book that we edited. And I have to say this for sale and it's for charity purposes. It's not non-profit at all, but it's contributing to promote these kind of activities because we organized a call for local initiatives that were managing the forest in another way. Some of them are educational activities like with primary school or secondary school doing direct actions in the forest and asking or teaching the students how the forest is managed because they will be the ones that will have the rights to manage the common land in the future. Well, this is a bit transformed, but these were well some of the events that we organized in this context. And then so after 4 years, this was a project that was first supported by the Fundación Banco Santander in collaboration then with University of Santiago. And after 4 years, the last year of these 4, we concentrated all the efforts in designing a project that could bring this to another level, could reach European funding, making actions in the forest, transforming the monocultures into a multifunctional system, engaging with the population, creating new skills, creating green jobs, and trying to make this sustainable and, above all, preventing forest fires. So we connected with different institutions here, 9 forest communities that gather almost more than 1,000 people, 2,000 hectares of forest, the council, other foundations, the universities, to create a project that now is kind of well-defined by them and got funding and got 2 million euros to be invested in the forest in this place, which we are super happy to be so successful. Because the project is on their hands now. I mean, they have empowered some communities that before didn't have resources, not even for preventing the fires, and now they have a lot of investment for doing proactive actions in that. Is this architecture? I think it's territorial planning, and that defines the architecture that we can do in here. This is, well, press releases and so on. I mean, this opens as a project that is related to identity, related to also sustainable territorial management, and it's also architectural and design culture, which is this model villages. It's a regional strategy that works with municipalities that have a high risk of the population, abandonment, aging of that population, and again, problems with forest fires. So we work in these two. We are kind of developing a master plan for the village in which it's also planned several actions of intervention in there, public facilities and so on, because the strategy is focused on reactivating this productive surrounding land. We start by analyzing in the territorial scale, focusing more in the urban scale, even going deeper into the architectural scale, trying to define what are the identity elements that we should protect and how we can work with that. Even we develop a catalog of every single building in these villages, so trying to give also recommendations of what to protect and how. Some of the actions are already in place and are promoted with some grants that the regional government gives to to these municipalities, but we also help them to design somehow or a pre-project, un anteproyecto, no? So they can then request for funding. So this is a kind of a social service to the local government, helping them to analyze their needs, to plan a project, to define small projects, and then request for funding. And this has been awarded with the funding for building here a social center that combines office spaces, multifunctional spaces, again, a kitchen for a gathering, and making celebrations and to dynamize this place. This was a last project that was built, already built. There were these farm buildings that were transformed into a community kitchen. And this is because the population is very old here, and some of them have this service of bringing them food to their homes if they are depending on that. So that food can now be cooked here, and also can serve a sort of processing center for food products that are produced in the village. This project is also connecting us to Europe with a project that is framed in Erasmus Plus project. It's called New Ruralities and puts together 5 European universities, schools of architecture that want to focus as well into the rural and not only in urban issues. And also helping and giving support to the local authorities to bring these initiatives to other places, like this forum in Portugal focused on the population. Linking together everything, we started a project that is more a reflection, a debate, it's a provocation actually, to all the agents in Galicia, which we call it towards a territorial agenda. We started by analyzing, I mean, this is trying to promote the discussion around several issues that we have in Galicia, several areas, trying to define what are the essentials, what are the common ground and the common consensus that we can have for development in Galicia in the next decade. And this is an example of our discussions with different experts in different fields, trying to promote these debates, also presentations with authorities and so on. We are also developing more of this in late June. And finally, I would like to introduce to you the Casa Ría, which is our new headquarters. It's the building that, after the pandemic, David Chipperfield decided to buy in Santiago de Compostela and be the house of these activities. Before, we were somehow moving a bit in the dark, doing our activity, connecting with everybody, but without having a public presence. And this is the building in which we are going to be set. It is aimed to be a building, open building, this conception of a house, open house. So the ground floor will be completely open, connecting an exhibition space, a canteen, actually connecting the local market with the garden and the Belvis Park, which used to be the orchards of the city. This is a bit, I mean, these are some exclusive images of the works of some weeks ago or some months ago. But this is the exhibition space in which you would enter, the interior passage that leads to the garden, also the canteen, which will have a dining room, office spaces, and above all, it will have a conference room, small conference rooms, and bedrooms for hosting researchers, hosting students, workshops, also experts that we bring for the discussion. We aim that this house becomes a place for connecting with the public authorities, with the private sector, with universities across the globe. This is Tongji University of Shanghai visiting us before the Casa Ría was open, but already developing some reviews and working sessions with them. And we hope that we can do the same with the WIC University next year. So thank you very much.
Good evening, bona nit. I'm so happy to be here again. I love to come here every now and then, every time they invite me, a pleasure. I am an unexpected local invited. In fact, if you see the, no, I'm the one who's not in negrita, and so I'm not in bold. So in fact, I know that you came here to listen to Manu and definitely to listen to David afterwards. So I'm not gonna take so much of your time, and hopefully then we'll have a conversation with David. But anyway, it's a great pleasure to be here, and also a great responsibility because they told me that I was kind of, that's a maybe a impossible word to translate, but a mamporrero or something like that, which is trying to kind of link Lawik, Manu, and David, because I was very lucky because Manu used to be one of our best students in Let's Up. And of course, after being our student, we tried to catch him and convince him to become also a part of Arquitectos de Capçalera, which here is Raúl and Yvonne who are joining us, and also Sandra somehow also has been many years joining us in part of this adventure. We took him, we make him work with us in Piso Piloto, and working very hard in the neighborhood of El Raval, helping to improve the habitat of the different vulnerable collectives that live there, with our own methodology, which is, as Manu has explained, a way to approach to the project to kind of from the inside to the outside, starting always entering into the house, talking to the people, and from there creating a methodology that goes and goes zoom out until we have, of course, a definition of a territorial strategy. But Manu also was one of our best students in PFC, in Proyecto Final de Carrera, which helped us to change this word. We didn't like at all the name of final, no? Something that you study a career. I guess that most of you guys are in the same issue now. Finaling the career, and you have this final project. We started with Manu calling, and we made an article, a book about this with his project that was one of the chosen exercises to exemplify that in fact is not, we think that the final project of career should be changed to the first professional project or something like that. No? And I think in Manu, something like this happened because that group that we had, the jury, was with Fermin Vázquez and Yvonne Bilbao and I. We had the opportunity to listen to you and that you showed your project, and definitely Fermin was so impressed. Maybe he can tell us afterwards about your project, and definitely he said to David, there's a guy there from Galicia that definitely will be very useful for you. So your project was not a final project, was the beginning of something which was much better, that you became now the director of Ría Foundation through that process. So that's what I'm saying, that I'm kind of here melting things that happen around me, but I'm not here the protagonist at all. And of course, I'm not gonna introduce and talk about David because and I think that Jaime has very well presented him. But yes, I would like to express a couple of things. First, I have one bad news and one good news. The bad news is that the territory and our cities are not shaped by good geographers, good ecologists, landscape architects, urban planners, or even architects, no matter how much of a Pritzker Prize winner one might be. The cities, no, the terrible difficulties that we are going through with the territory, holding the territory, the urban sprawl, gentrification, speculation, spatial injustice, and other destructive processes of the territories and cities are phenomena that occur regardless or despite these well-intentioned planners. Often they arrive late, we arrive late to those problems, and redeem their anger through extensive diagnosis. No? We've seen many times trying to analyze a problem and creating a bunch of information that most of the time goes under a cupboard. With these extensive diagnoses and ingenious projects or unfeasible theoretical plans covering their backs without being able to solve the problem of the planet's health and the well-being of the people who inhabit it. No? It has been a quite interesting discussion related to planning, no, and projects. No? And I think that this is something that in Barcelona many years had been discussed, and definitely from the 80s we started to create strategies through really getting into the projects. But who's really shaping the territory? In fact, our politicians and the developers are the ones who really are doing it. Territories and cities deploying projects sponsored most of the time through economic viability or profitability. The politicians, because their financing capacity is completely limited to the urbanization. No? We pay what we do through urbanizing territory. And developers, due to the natural economic voracity of the market and the system that competes ruthlessly, devouring the natural and social resources. In this cruel context, urban planning has specialized in repairing, deploying technical skills to mend the scars of poorly planned interventions. We definitely go late, and we definitely are repairing, not really ahead of this. So who thinks and shapes the plan? We said the politicians, but mainly Deloitte, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Dancy, Accenture, KPMG, PwC, all these enormous, the big five famous that Mariana Mazzucato talks very well in his last book about who's really shaping the world are, in fact, these big companies, that the big agencies that along politicians that need these companies because they deliver them turnkey projects. No? The politicians don't want to have problems. They want this agency that they do all the project and they give you this turnkey with green and social washing narratives. That's quite an issue. No? Most of those big companies, they are the ones who are devastating the planet and the ones at the same time that leading the most narrative, social washing narratives. So certain architects and planners say that urban planning is dead. I heard that from one very important Catalan architect, because of course, they know that good urban planning goes against their interest. And it's precisely with this tragic context when it's so urgent to value the few spaces of rationality and balance, spaces that are unique and urgent to create and to keep them. Technical spaces with a future perspective that connect with society, the economy and the ecology to favor structural criteria that not only respond to short-term reasons. And that's the other good news. That was the bad news. I'm sorry to start with something so terrible, but it's true. But the good news is that one of these anomalous spaces is the brand new Ría Foundation. And it's definitely quite a special area promoted by David Chipperfield, that the first thing that you ask is why? Why somebody who has all these prizes, and why is he coming to Galicia? In fact, many people doesn't know that he's doing this in Spain and in Galicia. And that's definitely, I would say, that it's about love. And that's quite important to understand that somebody like David is strongly and emotionally related with a territory that he feels that he has to give something back. He has done everything. He doesn't need more prizes. I mean, the list of prizes that you read, it's incredible. So what does he need? Definitely to return back all this to a territory. And he has, I don't know, it's like nos ha tocado la lotería, no? He decided that this should be in Galicia. Well, os ha tocado la lotería, sin duda, ¿no? It's a great, an amazing thing. And of course, this, the foundation objective, I think it's also, I mean, I love Barbanza project. It's quite my favorite, it's definitely my favorite. And because all the methodology and all the definition of what is a territorial agenda could be not only for Galicia, because that's the other thing which I think is quite interesting and important, and very important that La Week has chosen La Ría Foundation to come and to be a couple of years, I think, no? You're going to be working 2 years with them. Because I think that it's not just, it's always the good ideas come from the local, come from the inside, as we were saying, our methodology in Arquitectura Capçalera. And when you zoom out, you definitely create a model. And which I think is quite impressive is this model of the little aldeas, no? How they are interconnected and really define a new methodology to approach the quite difficulty that we have to relate with the territory. No? Cities, in fact, the models that we create in Barcelona are very much urban. No? And this mixture that in the Ría Foundation are created, I think that could be very useful to reflect in other territories. 25 years ago, I met David because he came to Barcelona to give a workshop in La Chap in the school, and I was his teacher assistant, also with Fermin. And with Fermin, we made him we interviewed him for a little magazine that has disappeared. But yesterday I found it. I was looking for, and I finally found it. And I think that I was ashamed first to read because I thought, well, 25 years ago, I don't exactly know what I was thinking. But I think it's not a bad interview. And we asked him many things, but he said something which I think still is very important. He says, every time I undertake a project, I'm very conscious when establishing the main criteria. And almost all of them revolve around certain idea of consensus. Clear ideas that avoid excessively demagogic narratives. I have grown up with the impression that you can only generate ideas if you can legitimate them by involving them in cultural dialogue to share them and in some way to reach consensus. This idea of participation and consensus, I think, are in the center, no, of the project of the Ría Foundation. And how is built this consensus? He said it a little bit, and he had like 3 images that, for me, is the place where, and the methodology that kind of around it deploys his biography and the biography of the Ría Foundation. A few months ago, I had the opportunity to go to the Ría Foundation and to go to the house of David. This is his kitchen, and this is the vision from the kitchen that he has with the sea that goes up and down. And we went to see the building that was I think was 1 week before was bought or something like that, and didn't start the works. And here is with, we went there with Fernando Galliano, and of course, Evelyn and David, and definitely with Manu, to walk around, and he was explaining us with gestures and very emotional narratives through how he felt and think that this could be the center, no, of this project. A project that you shown a section, no? And you didn't talk, thank you, because I know that we talked a lot about this, no? It's an amazing section of the building, which is placed next to the wall of the Santiago. And on top of the wall, there is a market. You have the market, the wall, the street of Ría Virgen de Cerca, and then the building, and the slope keeps falling, and with this balcony, which is the level of the street, and then the garden, and then you have the park. No? This section, which is very important that the market is placed there, and the relation of the territory, the market, the first floor where is the canteen that you said, but I always say that it's the kitchen, is his kitchen, no? The kitchen and again, the territory. I think it's a quite impressive decision, no, as a completely public floor plan, like a passage for the city. And then as long as you go up, you have like these spaces to think, you know, like at the same time a passage and at the same time a periscope that looks at the territory. You know, these two things which are very important at the same time, like being in the action, in the day by day, connected to the street, connected to the people, and at the same time having these spaces to think, to a laboratory to think and to transform. I think that the building is already a methodology. And definitely the kitchen, no? Here is the section, you have the market on top, the wall, and then the building which in here is under construction, and then this goes down. No? I can imagine David going to the market, buying the food, going down to the kitchen, inviting people from the neighborhood or from the aldeas or from talking about this, and then going again back, going up to think, to draw, and then go back to the territory, no? with these ideas. Now, this is the kitchen of his house. When he invited us, we still talk about this moment with Raúl and Yvonne. No? In the table where we had lunch, he cooked it while we were explaining him all the methodology that we used in Barcelona Regional, no? Looking at this amazing space. So just ending and leaving you guys with David, that definitely you are expecting this. I would say congratulations to the school to arrange this connection, and I tried at least a thing with Arquitectos de Capçalera that hopefully afterwards also Raúl and Yvonne will kind of talk about maybe getting deeper of this connection with the people and connection with the territory, putting in the center the people of Galicia through this complete amazing laboratory that you have created. Thank you.
You can, yeah. So, well, without further ado, let's introduce Sir David Chipperfield to the lecture. Maybe we can make the connection.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can see you as well.
Ah, good.
Thank you. Welcome to the connection. Welcome to Barcelona.
Well, I wish I was in Barcelona. I'm so sorry not to be there. It's very difficult, you know, speaking, as it were, to yourself in a sort of isolation. But I'll try. Unfortunately, I can't see anywhere. Ah, now I can see. Okay, I can see everything. So I will try to stimulate the sense that I'm there with you, even though I'm isolated here in my little paradise. I'm extremely embarrassed by the words that have been said, and of course, intimidated slightly by the expectation that is raised around what we've been trying to do in the foundation. Josep is much too modest to say that he's introducing me. I would say that you know, we owe him an enormous amount in terms of his support of us and what we've learned from him and others. I know Fermin is there, many other people who have really been part of discussion that we've had over the last 7 years. And Josep talks about good news, and in a way, I don't think the good news is Foundation Ría. I think the good news is that architects like us are sharing discussions, sharing concerns, and sharing common anxieties and information. And I think this is, I find this extremely exciting in a way. And why do I find it exciting? And as I understand, there's many students of architecture or young architects in this room. So in a way, I'd like to sort of direct some of the conversation and maybe anticipate some of the dialogue conversation we might have later about the role of the architect and my concerns about that. Jaime referred to the fact that in 2012, I was the director of the Venice Biennale. I was invited to be director of Venice Biennale. And so this was 12 years ago now. And I accepted the responsibility with slight trepidation. And I wanted to do something with the directorship. And I wanted to make comment about not individual architects, but the role of the architect. The Venice Biennale had become rather a showroom of talent. Nothing wrong with that. I was myself a beneficiary of being, my studio was a beneficiary of being, as it were, given space and visibility and promotion through previous biennales. However, it seemed to me that architects had become the subject too much, and that the Biennale, in this attempt to show architecture, were tending to show the individual talents of architects. And I think in a way, we don't need to question the amount of talent there is individually within our profession. And I felt that as a director of the Biennale, or the opportunity of being director of Biennale, my concerns were more about not what individually we do, but what we might do collectively and what was our role as architects. It seemed to me that, and as Josep referred to, I think very much better than I can do, in a sense that architects have become slightly isolated. We are, of course, concerned with issues that maybe others don't. We are concerned with the quality of physical things, and quite rightly so. We have some sort of guardianship about the quality of the environment that we live in, and obviously it's the built environment that attracts our attention. But if I think of the generation that taught me, a generation of architects that were essentially practicing in the years following the Second World War, they were a generation who were really sort of rebuilding Europe and rebuilding society. So there were architects very much commissioned to build universities, libraries, new towns, social housing, things which clearly contributed to the creation of society. So they were engaged. And I would say in the last 30 years, that position of responsibility has been taken from us or has been given up by us. And that as architects, we have inevitably become a sort of part of and as again Joseph explains this very well, we've become part of a system which is more to do with investment and real estate value than anything else. So where does that leave us? So in the Biennale, the title of my Biennale was Common Ground, and I wanted every architect, or I insisted that any architect that participated demonstrated in what way does their work represent an attempt to share with others, share professionally. Because the strange thing is that, of course, we all share certain interests. We've been trained at architecture school to believe that our profession can make the world a better place. We're all bound by that. But we have become a sort of, not by choice, but we are a competitive profession. We are rivalrous. In order for me to get a project, I must beat another architect. I must participate in a competition and show that my building is better than that person's building. There's nothing wrong. I mean, I believe very much in competitions, but I'm nervous about the fact that the rivalrous atmosphere within which we are commissioned has dominated our contribution. So when Joseph says good news, I think the good news is that when we talk, as we are all now, and conversations we've had with Joseph, and as I say, Fermin is in the audience. I know he's been part of our discussions. And what we have found, is an unbelievable generosity of other professions, other architects, other planners, other people doing research, to share and collaborate. And this is, I would say, such a relief. After a long career of competing and having to, as it were, sell a product, which is, as it were, my architecture or our architecture, it's an enormous relief, in a way, to put down one's gun and to think, how can we offer our services in another form? So when Joseph says, you know, why does he do this? And his explanation is an affection for Galicia, which is, of course, true. I do have, and my family has, a deep affection for Galicia. But I would also say it comes out of a desire to consider a different way of practice. That in my luxurious position, and I'm more than aware of that, and I'm also completely aware that everything I say is full of hypocrisy, because I advocate now to younger architects that you shouldn't be following the career models of people like me, because I think that structure is in a way inappropriate now. Clearly, I'm sitting here being an enormous beneficiary of the very system that I'm criticizing, of the, you know, architect as I don't want to say star, architect as a personality and an identifiable and you know, somehow brand. However, the thing which I'm trying to do, even within this hypocrisy, is to think whether I can use this fortune, I can use this privilege of respect that I now have. It's always tragic. You think, why wouldn't people listen to you when you were a 32-year-old architect or a 41-year-old architect, but they start listening to you when you're a 60, maybe 70-year-old architect? I wish I'd had a bit more leverage early on, but clearly now I have the opportunity to bring focus to a different way of doing things. And there's no doubt that it's clear that if I do something in Galicia, it can have an effect. I can actually use that. Now that's, in a way, it's a very unrealistic position. It's not a sort of model which is very easily applicable to another condition, but I still think it's something to use. So I've sort of coordinated these different circumstances, the circumstances of my own position, but I would also say the larger societal circumstances that we have now. All of us come to a position where we no longer can sit comfortably and accept that things are the way they are, or things happen the way they do, because the forces that we don't necessarily understand, and again, Josep refers to this, you know, who is forcing these things? Who is making these things happen? And we know that a lot of the times, no one is deciding to make bad decisions. No one is trying to make bad towns or bad traffic. But who is shaping that? And if it's accidental and, if you like, innocent, then shouldn't we be able to analyze that and shake it out? If we complained 10 years ago about traffic, I think it wouldn't necessarily have been very interesting to politicians or people in administrations. But now, because of a heightened anxiety about the natural environment, the fact that what we've done to our natural environment is now having significant, has caused significant damage, not just locally, but globally, then we are in a strange position that all of a sudden our concern for the built and natural environment is not something that is just a sort of obsession of architects, but that architects should be maintaining this obsession on behalf of us all. We realized, and Manuel explained some of the projects we're doing, and of course they don't seem, first instance, very architectural. In fact, you know, I've employed a very talented group of young architects who haven't actually built much apart from a granite bench. And of course, in a way, it's a rather unfair position to put them in. But I think we're all committed that, and as Manuel explained very well, that maybe asking the question, framing a competition, forcing an administration to construct a competition in the right way, with the right brief, with the right ambitions, with the right process, we can do much more than participating in a competition which hasn't been through that process, and all you're going to win is is a poor answer that might not get built. So we're trying to be proactive. We're trying to interfere and find different ways of going outside of conventional practice, because what conventional practice has done to us as architects has tended to keep our creativity within the very precise boundaries of the task we're set. So we have a client that brings us a project, there's a site plan, and our opportunity, and it's not always a bad opportunity, in fact, clearly there is something to be done, but the opportunity is to realize that task, an office building of 24 stories or a housing project, whatever the task might be, but we cannot ask questions beyond that, whether it's the right place to build, whether the strategy of the neighborhood has been thought out, as well as this singular site, which is just accidentally the subject of your concerns because of the approach of an investor. So if we want to break out of our position as sort of helplessness, that as architects we can say, yes, but we can't, it's not our role, we have no chance to do other things, then we have to think about how we might interfere and bring things in another way. And this is what the foundation has given us all the opportunity to do. And again, I would say that we are extremely impressed by other initiatives which are happening everywhere. I would say there's an enormous shift in focus, that there are reasons to be optimistic. We have to think how, as architects, we can stimulate and in a way promote a way of looking at how our cities and buildings and villages and towns are shaped, that is more considerate. And both Joseph and Manuel refer continuously to this, in a way, the local, the front line. And we have all immersed ourselves very much in the communities, and that's what Galicia has allowed us to do, is to understand, as it were, looking through the telescope the other way, instead of planners being studio-based, and the urban planning is sort of a compositional art. That planning is something much more sensitive to on-the-ground conditions. So I know there's going to be questions, but I think these are the things that I'm interested in. The idea that we have to show the connectivity between issues. The reason the foundation started is that we were asked to look at, or I was asked to look at, the issue of urban development and the way that Galician towns were treated from very much an aesthetic perspective. And I think it was expected that I would come back and give answers from an aesthetic perspective, that buildings, you should paint all buildings this color, or you should only use these materials. But what we realized very quickly was that the quality of the built environment was, of course, affected by bad buildings and lack of planning. But first of all, maybe it was affected by bad traffic planning, the loss of public space through parking, totally haphazard decisions about public space. And more worrying was that no one would take responsibility for that there is no linked up understanding of issues. So if we complained to the Minister of Urbanism about how the traffic had ruined the town, the Minister of Urbanism would say, well, that's not mine, that's the Minister of Transport. But if you talk to the Minister of Transport, they say, well, I don't see what the problem is, the traffic works fine. And then you say, well, it's ruining the town. That's not my problem. So I think it's only architects, or at least I think architects are in a very strong position that we feel, we do feel these things. We feel that these things are connected, and we feel that the quality and the achievement of these qualities should determine other decisions, that other decisions shouldn't end up with a consequence of the environmental impact that they make. And I think that the condition we now find ourselves with not only environmental crisis, but also the issue of social inequality, which becomes exaggerated also by bad planning or inconsiderate planning, and the elevation of land values, especially maybe not in Galicia, but certainly in the UK, where people can't afford to live in the middle of the cities anymore. So all of a sudden, there is a stratification, an economic stratification of society that we are part of. We are part of increasing land values, and we are therefore part of a sort of a cleansing, a social cleansing of our town. So we're realizing that we can't anymore just say, oh, well, that's how the world is. We can't anymore say that the free market or the consequences of commercial development or pragmatism or efficiency or any other justification which is given by either a commercial client or political administration. We can no longer accept that as an initiative. We have to insist that all development and all actions are measured in anticipation of their consequence of both environmental impact and social impact. And I believe that architects have to play a role in that. The question is, how do we modify practice, conventional practice, from where it is at the moment, where we have become, I would say, quite powerless in most of the times, into another type of practice where we as a profession are, as Joseph said, in front of the game, where we are actually trying to make things happen as opposed to trying to clean up things later. Those are the words I have before we, I hope, have a session of discussions and questions.
Tens allà una aigua, tens allà la teva aigua. Vale? I aquesta és tu aigua. Vale? Well, thank you, David. Thank you for joining the discussion, and thank you for your words. Also, thank you, Manu. Thank you, Josep, for your speeches and for your talks. Super interesting discussion, and I think that all the topics that have been raised are really important issues, and it's definitely fulfilling our expectations. I don't want to take the word myself, because I really want to give the word to our students, and also to this wonderful first row that is joining us today. And the discussion is meant to be fluid, and questions shall be raised to all of us, well, not to all of us, to Josep, to Manu, and also to you, David. So without further introduction, I give the words to our students that have been working on this session for the last weeks.
Hello. For the first question we wanted to ask you, so most major cities are starting to face related problems to environmental factors, and there is and will continue to be an ongoing battle with existing conditions of buildings, infrastructures, and urban areas. So we wanted to ask you, how do you manage to maintain local heritage while solving all these future problems that will continue to occur? And do you think we will be able to maintain local development while also solving these futuristic problems?
Who's the question to?
Maybe, sorry? David, maybe you can share
Yeah.
some thoughts.
Do I understand the question is saying, how do you protect things at the same time? How do you protect our cities at the same time develop them?
Yeah.
Yes. But also in the sense of like how major cities are facing environmental problems. So for example, New York is starting to have to face their facade problems with sun protection. So how do you maintain this local heritage while also solving problems that will come in the future?
Because of climate change.
Yes.
Yeah. Good question. I think that we are having to look at mitigation as well as anything else. So there's a number of things that we have to put in place, and I think the difficulty is that we're going from zero to, we're going from a very low understanding and trying to develop strategies and practice and theories extremely quickly. We should have been thinking about this a long time ago. We're not. The other problem is that it's one thing thinking about how you might theoretically improve and mitigate issues. It's another thing how you would actually put them into practice. And I think maybe that's the basis of your question. And we're realizing that even in terms of adopting a more sustainable approach and a more responsible approach to how we build and what materials we build out of both in terms of energy performance, but also in terms of CO2, we are in new territory. And it's only through practice, empirically, are we understanding how to put some of these things into place. But you're right in the sense that we are going to have to not only impose restrictions in terms of how we build new buildings. First of all, we're going to have to stop knocking down buildings. I mean, the only thing that we know, in a way, black and white, in terms of decisions that we might be involved in and their contribution to the subject, is that if you can keep a building, you're ahead of the game. As soon as you knock a building down, however efficient you can talk about it being, you are you're trying to catch up. So we do have to learn how to refit and repurpose buildings, first of all. And as part of that, your question is right, is how do we improve their performance as well? Because some of those buildings in the past would have been, the argument to knock them down would have been made, well, they're too old and they're not performing well and we know that you can repurpose and refit if there's stimulus to do it, and that also is comes from political decisions. If you don't compensate in some way or don't promote in some way the advantages of keeping a building, let's say, over knocking it down, then people are going to continuously knock down. So there are political decisions to be made in this, as well as technical ones, as well as the practical ones. I think it's also, I think, in terms of your question about the way that cities are going to have to respond, it's not only buildings, it's, for instance, public space. It's clear that the climate of cities like Paris in the next 20 years are going to be so significantly different that the way that we can use public space is going to be different. And these cities are already putting into place, I know Paris is looking at this very seriously, about how they are future-proofing public spaces and the way they're designed, the way they're planting trees, things like that. So cities are, I mean, I think there's two concerns we're going to have as a profession. One is in terms of how we build, and the other is how we deal with mitigation of things which are already in place.
Okay, maybe another question. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for your presence here and for the opportunity to ask this question, and which kind of relates to what all three of you have.
Can you get the microphone closer so he can hear you
Like this?
better? Yeah, and slow so he can hear you well.
Perfect. So I think this question actually relates to what all three of you have mentioned on the required shift in focus and the need for good urban planning, and how currently there is a focus on bad urban planning. So what are some performance indicators or metrics that the foundation uses to analyze and to appreciate the long-term success of their urban development initiatives? And if there are, what results have they yielded thus far?
Thank you. Maybe Manu, you can pop in and make some.
Well, one thing that I think it connects with the last question, and I steal this one from Josep, which is that when we are asked what is the future city, it's actually the existing city is the future city. We won't build a new city, and that is a reality. And I think this connects a bit with, I think, with your question, if I understand it correctly, that our way of approaching the reality is a lot with experience. I mean, I was discussing with Jaime before. Sometimes we don't have specific indicators that will measure some specific things that then we will get. I mean, sometimes they are just insights. They are just general opinion there that you can detect. But only by being there, you are somehow experiencing that, and maybe you can work with the local reality then to develop a strategy that can get consensus. But mainly it's contrasting the analysis that you are doing, maybe with already previous analysis and data that you contrast with the people there, if they feel that, if you are right with that, so you confirm your path, and then you can develop things. I mean, I don't think it is a right, or at least in our perspective, just arriving to them and showing your proposal never works. I mean, normally it's somehow better to get the analysis, your insights, then you get there, you get this direct counterpoint of them, their opinion, and then you can get some conclusion. I guess that developing that methodology, you can adjust somehow what are the questions that you might ask, or how are the framework of that, what is the framework of that discussion, or how you will design the framework in which they can discuss in a comfortable way. I don't know if I have replied specifically to that question. Thanks.
You want to add something?
I think there are many people who know.
Another question, maybe?
Hello. Regarding the location of Ría Foundation, I want to ask why was this location chosen, and how was the process decision, and what are the cons and cons for making a foundation in Galicia?
I guess I'm the only person that can answer that. Well, Manu can as well, but yes, it's highly idiosyncratic, and it's clearly a question. Are we asking questions which are, in a way, appropriate only to a Galician condition? And the Galician condition, there's no doubt, is a little bit particular. Or to what degree are the questions we ask pertinent to a big thing? To what degree can our work here be a laboratory? Clearly, the question of shell fishing and water quality, and the status of the port industrial land versus the urban qualities are quite Galician focused problems in some way. However, and it's a question that we ask, we are continuously reflecting on ourselves. It's our question too. We do think that if you are interested in process, which is, I think, what Manu was just talking about, that what we think is that as architects, and I would say as society, we've seen architecture as being resolved and measured and congratulated in terms of result in product. We are a sort of object-led society, and we could easily imagine that the condition of architecture, the role of architecture, and the role that architecture plays in society is highly successful, from the presentation and the media presentation of individual buildings. And there's no doubt there are some spectacular buildings being built in all European countries at the moment, and well, mostly a lot of European countries and many other places. However, we know that as soon as we go into our normal towns, that result, those individual buildings are a drop in the ocean in terms of how our general environmental conditions are. It always seemed to me, I taught at Yale for a while, and I did a session at Yale, a term teaching at Yale, and I was so impressed by the articulate theoretical discussions within the studio. But as soon as you left the building and walked around the street, you thought, well, this is super ugly environment. How come all of these clever theoretical and articulate discussions are inside the academy but have no effect, nearly no effect in the quality of our built environment? And therefore, we have to think about how we might bring theory and practice together. And I think we now have to accept that, you know, theory isn't an independent action anymore. It has to be determined through practice. And therefore, I would say that what we've tried to do in Galicia is to sort of, jump into these things and see what we might empirically learn out of it. And I think that the other question is, you know, and both Joseph and Manuel talked about sort of frontline experience. And there are moments when you think, why are we spending a Thursday night in a small town talking to 50 people about parking? I didn't imagine that that's where I'd be at this point in my career. Actually, why you do it is because you start to see how the theoretical positions and the practical positions, how the emotional and the personal are part of a dialogue that, unless you engage with, you aren't going to find any sort of linking up. And what we've realized as a foundation, we spend most of our time being the connector between issues, between responsibilities. It's what we've ended up calling the gaps. Not only the physical gaps, because we started off in terms of, you know, getting slightly back to your question, that the idea of architecture has been determined by the objects, but actually the quality of our environment is probably more determined by the space between the objects, by the gaps. And then you say, who acts responsibly? Who takes responsibility over those physical gaps? You know, making sure that a street is well designed, pavements and sidewalks and traffic. It falls in another gap, a gap of responsibility and a gap of understanding. So what we've understood in terms of practice is that we need to challenge systems of governance and how responsibilities are taken, how responsibilities and actions are taken about our physical environment in terms of the balance between development and protection, between the concerns of a citizen, the concerns of commerce, concerns of administrations, et cetera, et cetera. And I think, I'm not sure, but of course, what we're hoping is that the Galician context allows us to operate in a reasonably analytical laboratory, that it's a manageable laboratory, but that the questions and the issues that we are confronting are not only relevant to that condition, but that we might learn other things from that. And in that discussion, it's clearly important that we create strong dialogues with other communities, with other like-minded groups, of which there are many in Europe, and that we share information and we share experience. And again, go back to this, you know, what Josep calls good news, what I would call the good news is that I think this my common ground concern is there. And I do think that all we're doing, hopefully in Galicia, is very modestly pushing our stick into a prodding the animal with a sharp stick and seeing whether we can get some reaction, and whether that might have, whether we might share some of that information with others, and whether others might come and participate their experience with us. So yes, I mean, it's idiosyncratic. It's a strange place to do it in a way, but I think we believe that it's given us the opportunity to do, the opportunities to examine these issues. And I would have to say, the community has been, I mean, Manu might contradict me on this, but generally I would say, and I know the rest of Spain has a particular view of the Galician character, but I would say they've been really good to work with, or very open and very willing. And again, I would say I'm leveraging my position, because if you're from outside and you just tell everybody what a wonderful place they live in, and that you, as it were, validate, and that's what we do most of the time, is just remind them how important their environment is, how beautiful their environment is, how extraordinary certain qualities are here, and those qualities shouldn't be lost. I suspect, as an outsider, strangely, my judgment resonates in some way, because I'm giving external validity to a culture which is, I would say, rather over-modest and has some sense of inferiority about where they sit within the world. But closing your question, I would say that we're fairly convinced that if we conduct this this process well, then there might well be relevance in beyond the peculiar boundaries of, or the boundaries of this peculiar but wonderful region.
Thank you, David. Maybe we can open to our front row some question, if you may. Do we have a microphone, Marta? Or yeah, thank you. Thank you, Raúl.
Thank you very much for such engaging presentations and the inspiring work that Fundación Ría is developing in Galicia. I'd like to make a comment and pose a question in behalf of Arquitectos de Cabecera, which, as Manu explained, we share methodologies, but I think more importantly, we share values and aims. And thank you so much for having us so present here today. The comment is about an idea that you both mentioned in your presentation, which is the role of architects and architecture as a process. Manu said very clearly that there's the importance of posing the right question, right, to get the right answer. But there's another underlying idea for which to me it's an important slogan as well, which is knowing when to stop. Because as architects, we are not trained to stop. We are trained to design things, and the bigger the better, the more the better. But I think Fundación Ría is strategically knowing very well where to stop. And you both mentioned we may have a bigger impact if we design the competition brief that if we participate on that. And I think that's a change of mindset, which is extremely relevant nowadays, like architects making these points on their work. The question has to do with how are you perceived as Fundación Ría and as architects in Galicia once you change the way you want to be perceived. And I frame this in the sense of, I believe that when we practice this kind of architecture differently, there's a pedagogical impact on society at large, but also on politicians, on other practitioners, on other disciplines in which we don't work for them, but we work along with them. And the question is like, how do you engage with, Manu mentioned as well, like we sat down 4 politicians or 4 mayors from different municipalities which belong to 4 different political parties, which if this is difficult, as far as I know, it's even more difficult in Galicia, right? So how do you operate within this political ecosystem and social ecosystem? How are you perceived?
Manu, you go first.
Que voy yo primero. Well, I think you have to complete as well, but well, I mean, it's not easy. It's at least in our experience, you have to do hard work. I mean, the same hard work that you have to do in the conventional practice for getting to that submission. But in this case, I mean, it's creating. I think that creating understanding or trying to foster understanding the issues and the role that everybody can play. And I think that architects are quite good at least identifying what is needed for pushing a project forward. I mean, what professionals should be around you. And well, I don't know. I don't know if I know how to answer these questions. I mean, but I think this. I mean, it's a process of approaching the people that you feel that is the right people that you have to ask, or creating that environment in which they can participate. Is trying to create frameworks when other professionals can work with you, like giving some value and recognizing that that gap has to be filled with others. And then, I don't know, I mean, that sometimes is where that we stop the project when we know that, or I don't know, that we feel that this could already have an impact, or we need a bit, we need to go a bit farther to really have an impact. I mean, sometimes we have to go a bit farther and have this image so the politicians know exactly what we want to do, instead of stepping a bit back and leaving everything to an architect that will develop the project. In any case, I mean, we are touching fields that, I mean, not everybody wants to welcome us in their fields. So, but sometimes since we are filling gaps, or we believe that there is a gap there, we also irritate many sectors that somehow perceive us as intruders, and that we don't deserve that space. I don't know.
I think there's another way of, I can answer this question and slightly flatter my team at the same time. In one sense, we have nothing to lose. In conventional practice, you have a commission and you have to perform. And you have to perform to the expectations of the person that's going to pay you. It induces a certain deference, and I would say a certain anxiety and a certain level of fear into the studio, because we are a service. I mean, architects like to say that they're artists, but we're not artists at all. We have interests, artistic interests. We share interests with artists, but we're not artists because we are a service, and we are responsible. An artist isn't responsible, only intellectually responsible, not responsibly for a product. Therefore, so as architects, we carry a lot of responsibility and a lot of anxieties. It's very interesting for me to see the Fundación Ría team. They're much more arrogant than my other teams. They have a much more sense of purpose, because they're not selling anything. They can't be fired. No client's going to turn around and say, "Who are these arrogant?" It is true that Minister of Transport might say, "Yeah, I'm a bit fed up with these guys, keep banging on my door." But so what? So Manuel and the rest of the team, there's, who now have got many years' experience, a number of them, they have no fear. They go and meet ministers. They knock on doors. They go and hassle people. They make initiatives. They don't wait for me. They're not, my other officers, everyone say, "I wonder what David will think about this," or, "Oh, do you think it should be brick?" Or, "Oh my God, it doesn't look that good." Yeah. And then everyone's terrified of this decision or that decision, you know, and it is. I mean, all of us know how stressful, not only convincing yourself of an idea and then convincing a client, or then anticipating how you might convince a client and then building that in. So that produces a set of concerns that we have in terms of practice. But I think the idea of being a sort of dragon slayer, that we are in a sense poking things, as opposed to, we don't need to come with answers. We just need, as both Joseph and Manuel, we need to come with questions. And if you ask the questions right, you find the trail. And if you ask them nicely or cleverly, you might open some doors, and you might find some nice people behind there, and they might open the door for you, and then they might sort of get what you want to do. So I think in that sense, coming back to the question, I think it's a very different way of operating. And in a sense, of course, the current crisis gives us much more mandate than before, because no mayor anymore can say, I'm not really interested in these things. You know, traffic's it's never been a problem for me. I mean, we know that mayors don't want, I mean, every mayor we talk to say, you can talk about anything, but don't talk about traffic. But we know that publicly, all politicians now, they're interested in clean air, they're interested in social housing. It's amazing. They've all become overnight environmentalists. So even if they don't believe it, let's hit them with that stick, because it makes them uncomfortable. So you can, I think, of course, there's resistance, but I also think there's genuine interest. And I would say this goes back to the Galician condition, because one of the things which I would say motivates us on a sort of meta level, as an Anglo-Saxon, I've spent my life being taught that you can only get happiness through money. When you come to Galicia, where the per capita GDP is quite low, and yet there is a happiness factor extremely high, that, you know, and I know it sounds it's very dangerous as a foreigner to ask. I would say, oh, they're so happy, you know, they really have a good life. We don't say this lightly, because we are, you know, continuously say that, you know, are people happy in Galicia? I would say, Manuel, no. I mean, generally, there is a high quality of life. So how does that work? How does it work that a community, in general terms, has a high quality of life, which is not based on excessive economic success? So that's based on quality of place. It's based on environment and what the environment. Of course, it's much easier if you open your door and there's a field, or there's a view of the sea, or you can run down to the beach on a sunny day, you know, okay. But I think there is another aspect of what we're doing here, which is that people realize that what we're talking about is quite fundamental to quality of life. Where do you live? You know, what is the street like? What is the community like? What's the physical environment? There is a deep acknowledgement amongst normal people that that's important. So it's quite interesting. Whereas in London, this conversation would be amongst highly educated liberal people saying, "Oh yes, you know, urban design is so important." Here, it's sort of just genuinely, intrinsically and emotionally understood that quality of place is important. And as architects, that's what we live by.
Thank you. Any other question from the front row, maybe? Catherine, Felipe, Sandra?
Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation.
Closer, yeah.
Okay, can you hear me? Yes. I was thinking all the time, because everything started with these images. Manuel, you started with the muscles and the industrialization and the way of how the territory in a way has shifted from maybe something that is tradition, beautiful tradition, that I understand you also look out for, into this fast transformation of urbanization and of industrialization, even of the natural resources of the place, right? Which I think in a way is now also part of the identity of Galicia and of the whole coastline that you were talking about. And I was thinking, and this goes into this very important way of saying that you look for the pertinence of the questions. So to ask if, or to assume from the questions you might have made to the community and to people, if it is right to assume that, or to think that these less beautiful or unsuccessful, or you said bad buildings or bad physical this bad physical heritage that we have from the 1970s and 80s is not also part of the identity of Galicia and of the place that you work on and you live in. In a way, I'm thinking that maybe one should also look into, and I'm sure you're doing that, but I would want to, this is not a criticism, but it is a question more about the methodology of how to work with these layers of history also, and maybe some of them that we would say we would rather want to eliminate them, and to ask how you think maybe in the future, and also with regards to the questions that come out of the community and the livelihood that has also produced this industrialization and this kind of modernization that we have gone through everywhere, how you think of maybe integrating that into the transformation and into the looking into the future. Thank you.
This is for me or is for David? David.
For any of you.
Well, I think, I mean, just very briefly, you can't undo it. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's there. You can't go into these towns and say, oh, well, let's take some of these buildings out. It's the reality. And it's a reality made out of the circumstances here. So it's sort of honest. Whether or not it becomes a layer of urban development that will, in future time, have its own history. I mean, I worked in Berlin a lot, and we worked on extremely important 19th century buildings, but because the fascination then became of horrible GDR modifications, all of a sudden became protected because they reflected a moment in history. I'm not sure that Galician urban planning will ever regain that respect, but certainly I think you're absolutely right that you have to work with what's there and try to make sense of it. So, for instance, a lot of the things that we're looking at, or some of the places we're looking, I mean, well, the challenges are enormous. There are some enormous challenges. You know, the migration of young people from the rural and the abandoned village is not just an architectural question. The abandoned village is also a societal and economic question, which needs to be discussed. The fact that the towns have the maritime towns have large areas of industrialized areas that were for the fishing industry, which are now in a way desolate and neither belong to the sea and nor belong to the city is a challenge. You can't take that all away, so you then have to think about how would you reuse or reoccupy those territories, and I think you have to accept that as a context. All I would say is that the general global concerns, correct global concerns, are in a way advantageous to the conversations. So again, the lack of industrialization of the food production in Galicia and other things has always isolated Galicia in some sense. It's made them feel a little bit like they're behind everybody. But now the rest of the world is waking up and thinking and understanding that insensitive industrialization of food production is one of a huge contribution to the loss of biodiversity and the loss of natural environment. And now, and certainly in the UK, all farmers are being encouraged to abandon the excesses of that industrial production. So in that sense, the traditional, which could be seen as nostalgia, all of a sudden looks quite modern. And that's where I think the issues are interesting. I mean, I think some of the work that we're doing 15 years ago, the work that we've been doing on the common land in Barbanza, it could be like an ethnographic study of a dying tribe of people who living in a very strange way, which in a way it is. It's a dying way of living. On the other hand, because of our change in interest in how we protect land and how we might bring productive landscapes and protected landscapes into a different dialogue, all of a sudden it's a contemporary concern. In the same way that traditional ways of building buildings are giving us many clues about how we need to build more intelligently now. So tradition isn't just a nostalgia or a sentimentality. And of course, it's difficult because a community like Galicia, its identity is slightly caricaturized by nostalgic images and cliches of tradition. So I think it's one of the things that we have to understand better going forward. It was much easier in modernism, you know, in the middle of the 20th century. It's just easy. History was terrible and everything modern was great. Now we're in a very weird position. The first time in my life, progress is a strange animal. It used to be simple. I mean, progress was the next thing. You know, we saw, you know, I'm old enough to remember the Beatles happening. I mean, wow, everything just got better. Every new thing, everything that came along, the next car, wow, look, the BMW 2002, fantastic. Everything just got better, more exciting. Clothes got better, food got better, restaurants got better. Now, we're starting to realize that progress is not so easily identified, because we're seeing that so much of what we thought was advanced has come with a price that we're now all paying for. So progress has got a different shape on it, and it looks different. And for the architectural profession, that's something that we have to pick up too, because the traditional battle lines of, you know, people are interested in protection of buildings versus the people who wanted to build modern dreams is no longer that simple. And actually, it requires us to consider this composition, this cocktail of protection and development in a much more sophisticated way. And I think it gives us much more creative scope, because protecting, reusing a building is not formulaic. It requires a much more embedded practice than spending your time designing facades for a new building. I'm being simplistic, but I think that in some sense, it's a really extraordinary moment in terms of what we think progress is. And as architects, we've always been, in a way, partly responsible for giving vision to what progress looks like. You know, buildings always are meant to represent progress. When we redid our bar in Cordobedo, we inherited an old bar, the first bar of the village, and we took out the facade, which was their red painted facade, and all the villagers said, "Oh, how exciting! You know, they can't wait to see what the new facade looks like." And we just rebuilt the old one again, and they were completely confused. That's weird. We thought you were doing a new bar, and actually what you've done is rebuild the old one. That rather confused them, because in, you know, a place like Galicia, progress also there's an expectation amongst normal people that anything modern looks like something. And now what are we doing? We're trying to find a different position in relation to our general actions, but also it puts in some sense, it makes our role as architects, who are, as it were, the image makers for progress, also, I think, much more fascinating.
Thank you. Hey, Felipe? Yeah.
So, thank you for your presentation. I hope that maybe next 2 years we'll be able to continue talking about that. And I would like to give a question for you and Josep. It might not be the same answer. I don't know. You talked that, and I think we all agree, that the real project is for reality, no? And then architecture is a way, is an instrument in order to make this project come true, no? So it's something that is changing reality. And we all know that reality in our days, because rules, laws, is reacting against being changed. And that's what happened. So changing is rude, it's difficult. Maybe it's unpleasant. Maybe it's against the topic of being an architect, as we have our own practice, and how we have somehow succeed in what we are doing as being architects. And then we imagine that there's a possibility of compensating what we are doing wrong. That makes that doing architecture is somehow doing wrong, making problems, and then we compensate doing other things. And these two ways, we have been dealing with that. And the idea is, should we change things and risk our own being, let's say, or should we focus on compensate what we are doing wrong?
I think, of course, there is, for instance, in terms of environmental issues, I think there are two lines that we should be working through. Of course, the old idea of sustainability and kind of trying to compensate all the errors that we've been doing, I think is something, and mitigate maybe the process that we are going through. It's definitely urgent and we have to keep doing it. But now, and I think that's something also that relates very much with the work of Ría, it's not only about this, but also proposing and adapting to the new reality. It's quite important that when we talk about resilience, no? It's something very different than sustainability. It's something that pushes you through an idea of taking risks, of accepting some of the definite changes that we're gonna go through, and kind of try to imagine how will we living and adapting to that new reality. So the idea of arranging the things wrong that we did, or pushing it through new projects to test the new situations, I think both things should be done. And definitely something that hasn't been talking here, and I think it's very important in terms of understanding what La Ría Foundation is doing. It's also, no, I talked that interview that we did with Fermin to David, he was talking about participation and consensus. That doesn't mean at all that we shouldn't take risks. And I think La Ría Foundation is taking risks and making errors. I think it's very important to learn from errors and learn from taking risks, because we are living in a moment, in a moment which is, we cannot just staying and fixing the things that we did wrong. We have to take risk and try to also imagine which are those new landscapes, these new situations that we should take profit of. And I think that this is something very beautiful about a process that is being generated. I'm sure, he didn't say it, but I'm sure that David is learning very much through this process. And I'm sure that this is also one of the things that he's excited with. I think that Manu is learning every day, and he doesn't have all the answers. And definitely me as a part of the board, every time I interact with La Ría Foundation, something new is happening, something new oblige you to react, because definitely the things that were done wrong, it's not easy to solve it, and it's not easy to imagine which are the projects that are going to be well done or needed for the territory. No? It's a process of learning, designed by learning or learning by designing, which is happening here. I don't know if I answered your question.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's really late and we're out of time, and it's been a pleasure. Maybe if there is any last, I want to open to anybody that would like to make a last-minute question. If not, yeah, just make it very brief. But yeah, let's go for it. Yeah, go ahead. I mean. Yeah, it's working.
Yeah? Okay. No, a very short one to finish. My question is, what do you think the universities can do in all that change of mentality or that you are proposing here today? What do you think the role of the university should be?
Good question. Maybe David, yeah?
Yeah.
I think it's a very good question, and I think, and I'd also like to add a little bit related to the last question in this. It's quite dangerous if we just sort of redescribe architects as a sort of vague combination of environmentalists and sort of social activists, and because in the end, we could find ourselves standing naked in a, with being sort of the sort of weak at sort of amateur at everything, and giving up our territory as architects, which we mustn't do. So we must see this issue through the lens of architects. And what I feel about that is that we need to not give up architecture and become, environmentalists. We just need to see how we might apply architecture in a more meaningful way. It does not denigrate the importance of architecture at all, I don't think. I don't think we all just have to stop building and just look at how we sort of save the planet. I think architecture and the way we build is profoundly important, and that's what should be taught at architecture schools. But I think we have to think more seriously about how architecture is part of an idea of society, not only in terms of process, how it's commissioned, but also in terms of how it participates, and the questions that are asked of it at the moment. Too many of the questions are to do with efficiency or commercial performance. And coming from London, I would say my city has been changed out of all recognition in the last 30 years. And I'm not sure that it's to anybody's benefit apart from investors. It hasn't made the city a better place, although it's clearly generated a certain amount of wealth, and it's certainly at certain moments created. But I think we have to think of ourselves as a profession, not giving up the importance of architecture, the importance of the built world, and how that built world affects the natural world. But I think it's not an issue of totally changing everything. I think it's just an issue of a perspective, and clearly there's a certain fundamental concern about that. There's no doubt that the profession is viewed with suspicion, and it's a bit weird that we come out of architecture school thinking that we have a real place in society. That's what we've been trained to do. And then we find a society that doesn't have a place for us, apart from being part of a commercial program. And I think we have to concentrate on that. And that has to be not only part of education, but how training addresses itself and links into political commitments as well. We also need to promote planning as a skill. Planning needs to become a bigger part of architectural training, not just the designing of objects, but that requires not only studio-based or at least the reconsideration of syllabus, but also the way that architecture schools relate to a wider notion of governance.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, David. Thank you, Josep. Thank you, Manu. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. Also, I would like to thank the front row and all the students that stayed until the very end. We would love to continue this discussion in the next years. You already mentioned that, Manu, also Josep, in your intervention. We are proud to announce that we are on talks for an agreement between the university, the UIC School of Architecture, and the Ría Foundation to be able to continue working. We take this photo as a kickoff of really working together, and we will work from our design studio in fourth year in the next year in Galicia together with the foundation, and following your steps and really putting ourselves to your service to work on real projects as much as possible to help, and also to fulfill this new syllabus that we are out to write for our university. And then hopefully also we will answer some of the questions on how to extrapolate that knowledge on the following year, working here in Barcelona, maybe implementing some of this methodology that is being built also from Arquitectos de Cabecera with your knowledge. So thank you so much, David. It's very late. Thank you for joining us all the full session and also being patient and so to answer all the questions from the audience, and hope to see you very, very soon. Thank you to everyone. Gracias,